Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Robin Rice Voigt. Kathy Bachman and I met online through the Women's Bible Study, which meets every Wednesday morning. And we've been asked to speak about our relationship to Trinity and stewardship. My husband Steve and I joined Trinity last December, so we're pretty new members. And I'd like to share a story with you about being held in common. Recently, I visited a friend in the hospital. Richard Mayberry had been the rector of St. Francis Episcopal Church in Stamford, Connecticut, where I grew up. Richard married Steve and me, and he baptized our eldest son, William. Richard retired to the Boston area, and like me, was a new member here at Trinity. When I visited him, Richard had been in the hospital for 3 weeks. At the beginning of his illness, he and I were making plans to attend candlelight carols. 3 weeks in, I could hear the despair in his voice when he said to me, "I've lost the will to live." A sentiment he also shared with several others. I'm a hospice nurse, and when I hear someone say, "I have lost the will to live," that's something I take very seriously. When I visited, it was clear Richard wanted to be in a local hospice, so I set about making those arrangements. In the midst of this, Brandon Ashcraft came in, bearing the wood communion box that we've all seen blessed as it is sent forth to share with those who can't get to church. Brandon set the table in the midst of the messiness of that hospital room. Let me tell you exactly what God arranged that day. I already told you that Richard had been the rector of St. Francis in Stamford, Connecticut, and that I had been a parishioner there. But what you may not know is that Brandon had been a seminarian at St. Francis in Stamford while he was a student at Yale. Held in common by the bonds of both St. Francis and Trinity, we shared an extraordinary Holy Communion. The following morning, I called to check on Richard. I learned that he had died peacefully in his sleep earlier that morning. This is a huge church. There are thousands of us. We have a deep bench of clergy. And yet, the three of us who share deep roots at St. Francis and who have been here at Trinity less than a year ended up in the same hospital room, sharing what would be Richard's last Holy Communion. How does God do this? With our help. My husband Steve and I have substantially increased our pledge out of our gratitude and appreciation for the ministry of this church. And we invite you to give generously so that God and we can keep doing this work together.
Thank you, Robin. How nice it is to be here. My journey to Trinity began in the late 1970s when I would occasionally come to services for the beautiful music and the liturgy, always sitting in the back row. That changed in the early 90s when my partner and I adopted 2 children and wanted to have a church home for them. The peaceful hours with the boys in the nursery, with those wonderful caregivers, Sherry and Betty, during the service, were certainly spiritual blessings. Those grateful years as a young parent led to my much deeper involvement in the church through the building committee and the vestry, through multiple rectors and chapters in our beloved church's life. Through changes in my life occasioned by the pandemic and by my partial retirement in Provincetown, I am now one of Trinity's streamers of services and Zoomers in the Women's Bible Study. These are verbs which did not exist when I first came to Trinity. I now attend Episcopal services at the Church of St. Mary of the Harbor in Provincetown, where the passing of Robin's dear friend Richard Mayberry was also recently remembered. Trinity's reach of holding us in common extends to a broad geography. There are a number of faces at St. Mary's that you would recognize. My journey at Trinity has not always been joyful. My darkest time here was during the struggles around gay marriage. But I have stayed these many years in one way or another because We hold each other in community here through good times and hard times. We preach and we try, never perfectly, to practice love and tolerance for others. And because Trinity Church is a spiritual anchor for our community and our city, there is no other place like it. And I give, even though I cannot now be here in person frequently, because I am so grateful for the wonderful life that God has given me, and because institutions, as mighty and enduring as they may seem, are only as strong as we together make them year by year. I hope you'll join us.